everybody, this is John with Anglers Covey, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Tips and Tricks. With stillwater season upon us, I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about one of my favorite ways to rig for fishing nymphs in stillwater. Everybody is familiar with the static nymphing rig, and if you're not, we can help you with that. But that's where you just have a strike indicator and then flies underneath it suspended at certain fixed depths, which is very effective, absolutely. But this method is a method that I refer to as midge stripping, and this has actually turned out to be probably my favorite and most effective way to fish anything subsurface in stillwater. So actually we're going to start with the fly line. Everything's going to be a little different in this setup, and the fly line is where we start. I like to use an intermediate type 1 sinking fly line, and what this line does is it goes about 1 to 2 feet below the surface, and then it just remains there. It doesn't just keep dropping. This is a great fly line for this technique, so I'm going to start there, and you're going to want to match your fly line to whatever size rod you have. You'd be perfect right there. The next thing I'm going to do, if I'm using a tapered leader, I'm going to start with a 12-foot leader. I like to use just straight fluorocarbon and kind of avoid the tapered leader. When you have a singular diameter material, it is actually going to cut through the water quicker and get into that zone a little bit quicker where those fish are going to be feeding. Personal preference there, but that's what I like to do. So I'm going to start with my leader, my fluorocarbon, whatever it is here, and I'm going to have about a 15-foot piece of this. If you have a tapered leader, go to a 12 and we can add tippet. Okay? So 15 feet, about 7 feet from the end of my fly line is where I'm actually going to tie my first dropper. And when I tie a dropper, it's very similar to a lot of techniques in Euro nymphing, but I'm going to tie this dropper, just another piece of fluorocarbon, right onto my leader. So 7 feet down from the end of my fly line, and I'm actually going to just lay this piece of tippet on top of my leader with the small tag facing the end of my leader. So the long end towards my fly line, small end towards the end of my leader. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to tie a triple surgeon's knot. Triple surgeon's knot's going to be fine. I'm not going to do the full. And what you'll see here is when I tie that tippet on, it actually bows up towards the fly line. This is how I like to rig everything. It kind of keeps the flies away from my leader and prevents wrapping around the leader. So 7 feet down, first dropper there, and then I might go another 4 to 5 feet, and I'm going to actually tie on a second dropper. So that second dropper, some good space between that and the first one, and then the end of my leader. If I'm using a tapered leader, this is where I could attach some tippet if I needed to, and then extend it another foot, 16 inches somewhere in there. And then the very bottom of my system, I'm actually going to tie another fly. So I'm going to have 3 flies operating in this system, and what I like to do is start with a heavier fly on the very bottom, so a tungsten bead chronomid, something like that, something that's going to really kind of keep those flies down and elevated this way. The interesting thing about this is you can fish every single bug that's in the water with this method. There's a lot of really good swimmers in terms of bugs that live in the still water, and this technique imitates those perfectly. So I can use a combination of scuds, leeches, damselflies, calabatus, more chronomids, you name it. This is how I can fish it. The interesting thing about this is in the strip. So it's not a strip like you would strip a streamer, and that's the really big thing you have to kind of wrap your head around. I like to look at it in terms like this. If I'm holding my stripping hand on the reel and I'm pulling it, I want to count to 8 seconds before my hand reaches my hip. So it's really slow. And the pause is equally important here. I'm going to do a pause of 2 to maybe even 3 times the strip length. So maybe 25 seconds or so. And in that pause is where you're going to get the majority of your strikes. In fact, I don't recall ever getting a strike on the actual strip. The interesting thing there as well is the strikes feel very different. Since you're holding your fly line in basically your trigger finger in your stripping hand, you can actually feel the take. And it's kind of a tap. It's a tap or a tick that you feel, and then you can just do a regular strip set. This is a very deadly technique, and I really urge you to try it. If you do have more questions about this, certainly come into the shop and talk to us. We're more than happy to help. But definitely try the Midge stripping technique next time you're out on our stillwater. Thank you, and until next time, we'll see ya.